Welcome to the very first GTM track at TiEcon. I'm Anurag Wadehra, and it's my pleasure to invite you here. And we have 3 back-to-back sessions, all focused on how to build and scale GTM in the AI era. I want to start by thanking the volunteers in the room, Garima, Sandeep, Vasu, and Kushal, and Harshika. This is a community-based program, so without the volunteers who are supporting us, we won't be able to do any of this, so thank you. The first session, I'll have the pleasure of having a brief chat with Jyoti Bansal. And the second session is going to be focused on how the CMOs are looking at the challenges in the AI era for building and scaling GTM. And the third session is focused on talking to CIOs who are being asked to build, buy, or scale the GTM technologies. So it's a unique perspective on GTM challenges from 3 different lenses. So let's jump right in. I would invite Jyoti Bansal to join me on stage. Okay, so Jyoti needs no introduction, but I'll quickly recap a couple of things about Jyoti. He's, of course, the founder for Harness and Traceable. He founded Harness in 2017, Traceable in 2020, now currently valued over $3 billion. He was also the founder and CEO of AppDynamics, acquired by Cisco for $3.7 billion. Uniquely, he co-founded and is a partner at Unusual Ventures, which is VC firm that is focused on supporting founders through specifically the treacherous PMF journey. And his technical background, he and I share the alma mater from IIT Delhi. And he's worked in Silicon Valley for many years. And more than that, he is an engineer at heart with more than 20 patents to his name. We wanted to talk to Jyoti. We could have talked to him on many different avenues, but today we wanted to talk to him based upon one simple idea, which is first-time founders are obsessed with product. Second-time founders are obsessed with GTM and distribution. That's what Naval Ravikant said. And I don't know anybody who is a serial founder and entrepreneur and engineer who approaches the art and craft of GTM with engineering mindset and the precision that Jyoti brings to that arena. I've been following his writings and readings and work for last decade as he has evolved his thinking on PMF and GTM. So we will jump right in. First of all, Jyoti, thank you for coming here.
Great to be here. This is always a great forum and great initiative with the Thai community here. It's you said the first-time founders obsessed with product, second time with go-to-market because you learn it the hard way the first time. That's why.
That's so true. That's so true. And so let's jump right into. We are privileged that your father and your mother is here in the audience. Welcome. And if I may,
go-to-market.
Yes, if I may bring out the very simple fact, you have talked about it publicly that you had early exposure to your father's business growing up in Rajasthan. I'm more curious about your experience at IIT Delhi. I know from my experience that there's not much entrepreneurship happening at that time. Mm-hmm. So what was your experience at engineering school, and how did that shape you in your journey, if positively or negatively, towards entrepreneurship?
Yeah, by the way, it's very different in IIT now.
That's true.
I was in IIT Delhi campus, did a keynote there a few years ago, and I asked the question to the students there, like, how many of you working on startups? And there were like 120 startups in IIT Delhi hostels, like just in one IIT. So you have now it's very different. Everyone is a startup founder in the university, but it wasn't the case in your time and my time. And the IIT education is all about engineering and technology, and there's really not too much focus on entrepreneurship, building things. So you have to do a lot of the learning outside of the academic program, and that's where I learned a lot. For me, that was at IIT, we used to have this festival of a lot of colleges will come together, and you will have a scientific festival called TRIST. And for some reason, the sales and marketing responsibility of that came on my shoulders that when I was there, and it was a great learning experience. From I was like the sponsorship seller. You do the cold calling, you find the companies, you go there and you pitch why you should sponsor this festival, and we increase the sponsorship 10 times that year. And to me, it's like, okay, that's the product was the same. It was just the go-to market, right? That's where go-to market is so key.
So your first cold calling for sales deals were for sponsorships at IIT Festival.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a great learning. You learn how to be the cold caller.
That's true. There's something to be said for that. Now, I want to click into your experience at AppDynamics and then subsequently Harness and Traceable, particularly from product market fit perspective, right? First-time founder, obviously you found product market fit successfully at AppDynamics, and then subsequently. So can you tell us what lessons were unshakable in your bones after AppDynamics, and what you had to unlearn? Those two hard things often happen.
Sure. I would say, when I started AppDynamics, this was the beginning of 2008. And then you had the big, the Lehman Brothers crash and all happened in September of 2008. And there was this winter for 2 years of no funding, nothing. So it really forces you to be very, very precise and what do you need to come out of that. And which is what defined for me the definition of product market fit, which is kind of everyone talks about product market fit, but still not really well defined. And to me, the definition is simple: a product that sells. It's that's what I call it, a minimum sellable product. Can you build something that you can sell? And sell means if you're going after an incumbent, can you make the justification of how you can replace the incumbent, because the things that people need from incumbent you have to provide, and you have to do something significantly different than what they do. So that could be those. Or you're going after a completely new market, then you have to do at least solve the minimum amount of pain that's there in that market. But that's what will sell, and what kind of capabilities will sell. So that's what I learned at AppDynamics. Kind of in a couple of years, it took some time to build the right product, get the initial set of customers. But I've always looked at your definition of product market fit. You should be obsessed with getting your first 5 customers, then getting your first 10 customers, and getting your first 20 customers. And now I define product market fit in most cases as if you're selling in enterprise B2B kind of markets mostly. In enterprise B2B kind of market, you have 20 customers who have gotten value from your product. Then you have a product market fit. So that was kind of the lesson learned from AppDynamics. But when I brought it to my second company, Harness, initially the hard part was I thought also now I'm an expert in it, I got such a good thing and it will be very easy. And what you learn the hard way is that product market fit is still a hard exercise. Every time you do it, it's a hard exercise. There is no shortcut to it. You do it second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. It's a hard exercise. And that's the reason, I've been writing a lot about how do you go more scientific about product market fit, because there is no, you can't get it there otherwise.
So if you double click into that, because you went from app monitoring intelligence to CI/CD, the deployment platform, and now with API security, those are meaningfully different segments. And recently, even you quoted publicly that when you did the merger between Harness and Traceable, it was because you had an instinct on same ICP. So can you share a little bit more about navigating when you are crossing markets and segments, and you're building products for many of them?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what lens you look at it. I look at a lot of the work that I've done, AppDynamics and Harness and Traceable, they're all broadly speaking in the developer tool chain, and developers need tools for, monitoring and observability, for deploying and testing. They need stuff for security, and they all fall in the same broader thing. And, I always look at the lens of there are 40 million software developers in the world. AI might change it, for more or less, but we'll still have either AI-based programmers or whatnot. And that's about $4 trillion of spending that happens in the world. And there's at least half of that could be optimized with the right tool chain and the right products and the right things. And it's a big optimization opportunity in the world. So we can build the best products to solve those. So in many ways, yes, there is you go from one to another, but it's still solving the pain points around how software engineering is done and how software is built.
But you need to have an ICP lock. That's important.
You have to have ICP locked, and ICP is what kind of companies that are going to buy your product. product, where the relevance is. Like for example, like in AppDynamics, when we're selling to DevOps, it's SREs, and in Harness we're selling to DevOps. A PLG motion was very, very key. Like you go in PLG, you go to the developers from a go-to-market perspective. And when I started Traceable, which is in cybersecurity, it's like similar, broadly speaking, similar kind of space, but still different segment in there. In cybersecurity, you have to go and convince most of the times like a CISO top-down selling.
That's right.
It's very hard to do a PLG motion going, and then you learn it the hard way. Like what works for one set of use cases, it won't work for the other set of use cases. And there are a lot of nuances to it. Like something that's where you bring like governance and operations inside the developer workflow. You need a different go-to-market. If you have something that a developer can download and run on their laptop, you need a different go-to-market. Yeah. So there are nuances of the ICP and the go-to-market motion that you gotta figure out.
So final question on this topic. For an early-stage founder who is figuring out ICP, and particularly if they are tempted to say, let me do sales motion, let me do product-led motion, do you have any advice on, do you do it in parallel? Do you do it sequentially? Because there is a lot of art and craft to that, and you can waste a lot of time.
Yeah. There is. I would say don't try multiple motions at the same time. At least in the early stages, you have to pick something. And it's the one advice I give to people is the validate every assumption you have. Like your assumption, but you start with an assumption. So let's say the main thing you have to figure out is what would your business look like at some steady state. And normally I would say like think of 100 million of revenue. At 100 million of ARR, your business is 1,000 customers paying you, 100K a year, or you have like 1 million customers paying you $100 a year. Or you have 10,000 customers in between. Like what is your business? What does your business look like? So a lot of your go-to-market really starts from there. If you're an enterprise-heavy business with 1,000 customers paying you 100K a year, that's a different business. Like you go and build out an enterprise kind of a sales motion for it, and then now you have to test your assumptions. Like the product that you're designing, the problems you're solving, are they more relevant for the enterprise? Are they more relevant for the SMB? Is the buying more central? Like let's say if you're selling security, you can't sell security to a small business unit inside a company, because someone has to implement that product for the entire company. Same thing applies for like HR or things like that. Like no one is going to buy HR product for one small team in a company. But there are other products where you could sell to one team in the company. You don't need to have the same product for the entire organization. So these are the things that you got to figure out. Like what would your business look like, and how do you validate the assumptions? And a lot of like when I write about like in our unusual field guide that we talk about is the most important part in the early stage founding journey is to validate the assumptions, and be very rigorous about validating your assumptions, which is really go and talk to a lot of potential customers, like 30, 40, 50, 70, and that's how which assumptions are right, which are not, and then you kind of change things before you go and build your product, and you invest in hiring sellers and all the things.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned Unusual Field Guide, because if you haven't heard of this, it's a fantastic trove of insights, and brings me to my next question, that you're a venture capitalist and a partner at Unusual Ventures, which has extreme focus on hands-on support for founders, and particularly on the intellectual IP and other things you're building around the GTM. I follow that closely. Question for you. All the AI founders that you see now in Unusual or otherwise, how do you guide them to stay grounded in the hype of AI?
Well, grounding will happen, once you run into the wall of not having revenue at some point. It's like, remember I don't know if you guys watched the Silicon Valley show. Like, there was when there is no revenue, everything is very easy. It's you are in the initial world of dream, right? But at some point you have to get revenue, and that's when the grounding just happens the hard way. But most of the times is AI or not AI? The fundamentals of the business not going to change, which is that you have to build a product that delivers value to a customer, and you have to compete in the market around it. All the stuff that's happening in today, like, which is a great time to build companies today, because AI creates a disruption moment. But the few things won't change. Like if you have a real problem that you're solving, there will be about 10 to 20 other companies who are solving that as well. So you are in a race. You are in a race to compete, and out of those 10 or 20 companies, like 1 or 2 or 3 will win at most. So you have to keep that in mind. Like there's a race going on. You're competing with other players. Yes, and most of the companies unfortunately won't survive. Won't succeed. So that's not going to change AI or not. The second is eventually you have to get revenue. And you have to get the predictable revenue process and the revenue cycles, and which really comes from getting the product market fit, go to market. Yes, there will be efficiencies and everything. Things could be done probably more efficiently. But and we see these things are like companies got to 100 million ARR with no salespeople or all that. But those are exceptions. Very, very small number of exceptions. I would advise not to assume that can happen to all companies. You have to invest in building a systematic go-to-market at some point.
Thank you, sage advice. Let's switch to scale. Once you are lucky enough to have found product market fit, let's pick a number. Let's say you have 80, 100 million and you have a corner of the market on the primary product. How do you think about what is called the second act, line extension, the second product that you need to expand to? How do you do that when you are all cylinders firing on building GTM?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. That's something also I learned the hard way in my first company, AppDynamics. First of all, don't wait for $80 to $100 million. That's too late. And most of the times it's too late. Is my first advice. Like as a company, if you start getting into $20, $25 million of revenue, that is the right time to start thinking of your second product, third product, beyond that. And many companies make a mistake to wait too long, and then kind of your growth rate slows down. And you see so many of those zombie companies today, out there, which are like 10 million, 20 million, 30 million revenue, and kind of just stall. Like there's no growth, nothing happening. So we at AppDynamics we learned how to do this in a way. Like how do you go from product 1 to product 2, product 3? You really want to look for markets that are pretty adjacent for you, mostly the same users, same buyers. But we didn't do in a very systematic kind of way. So we kind of stumbled our way through that, So when at Harness, I said, okay, can we create a sort of a method to the madness around that too? And so we created this concept, and I gave a talk about it recently, just on that topic. We call it startups within a startup. So at Harness, we started with one product. And now we have 15 products in the Harness platform. So not just like product number 2, product number 3, we are at 15. But they're all built as these kind of semi-independent startups inside Harness. It's kind of similar to the model like probably like what Amazon followed in the early years. Like you have one pizza, two pizza teams, and then they have general managers who are like almost the CEOs of the startup. They run them. They're accountable. They take ownership around those. So that's how we have set up. Like we have 15 startups with they are startup CEOs. The people are operating them. They have full ownership. They have full accountability. But there's a shared platform of go-to-market. There's a shared technology platform. Allows us to kind of think about it. If you don't think about scaling from a product to platform, in most markets, the growth is not sustainable. Yeah.
So you brought up a very important insight at the end about moving from product to platform, right? Based upon various heuristics. Some people say, there's a milestone that the company has to reach when you become a platform. Earlier in the era of Salesforce growing up, AppExchange took many, 7, 8 years, if not more. What's your instinct, those who know that they will end up having to become a platform sooner or later? Any insights or instincts on product to platform shift?
Well, I would say, and every market is different, every use case is different, but in most markets in the B2B enterprise kind of world, you start with one use case, and you should not start with more than one use case, because it's very hard to compete and win in that. Like you're solving one problem, you have a product which should be considered a point product at that time, but you make an excellent point product, you start expanding your business, get to maybe $10, $20 million of revenue. If your point product was so useful that maybe you can grow much more, but normally your growth will start to slow down a little bit. Your other competitors will catch up and other things. So you want to go from one point product to a second point product to a, maybe at some point a third point product. But then you will get to like maybe a couple of $100 million of revenue, which is a great place to be, like, a few $100 million of revenue. Very few companies get there. But the problem is at that point, that's where if you want to get from there to $1 billion of revenue, like there is no company with $1 billion of revenue in the that didn't become a platform. Right. That you have to bring an ecosystem of other people who can build on top of you and all. That's where that platform journey starts. I normally advise people to don't think about platform when you are 0 in revenue or $1 million in revenue. Find the solution, find the point, the use case that or the acute pain, and platform will come later.
It's fantastic. So start with the solution to a pain, and hopefully you'll be lucky enough to grow into a platform.
Sometimes I see founders who are like, they're building a platform from day one, but now the challenge is like, how do you sell it? Because why would someone buy a platform that is not defined what problem is going to solve? People don't want it.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's switch to mentorship and paying it forward. You and I, we were talking about it earlier. We were both fortunate enough to have found mentors when we moved to the Valley. We shared a mentor with late Professor Rajiv Motwani, and who shaped many founders, including Google founders. And how has mentorship shaped your journey? And how do you think about giving back, both personally and through communities that you're forming?
Yeah, it's one thing that we are very fortunate in an ecosystem like Silicon Valley here, is that there's a community of knowledge sharing, information sharing, paying it forward, giving back. And I feel I was very fortunate that that you get to learn from a lot of successful people, or a lot of people who have done things that you don't know yet about. So I strongly believe that we all have to do it. I try to do my best on that. It's and what I realized was for initially I said, okay, people will come in and ask me for advice, and can I have 15 minutes of your time, 30 minutes of your time? And it becomes very obvious at some point it's not scalable. And the best way for me to do it actually is put my thoughts together in writing on somewhere and publish it. So instead of giving writing advice in these different things, or come into forums where there are bigger communities where we can share things. But you talked about Professor Rajiv Motwani. It's when I was starting, this was I was one-person company, AppDynamics. I was just starting out. I had this idea. I was a strong engineer, never ran a business, and I was like, okay, let me try to figure out how to start a company around this thing. And then someone introduced me to Professor Motwani, and he was very, very helpful in connecting me with different investors. Kind of guiding with how to start a company, how to think about product market fit. And it's I owe a lot of to mentors like him. It's unfortunate that he passed away in an accident. Back then. But I know a lot of founders owe a lot to him. He was mentor to at least 50 to 100
Right.
founders who he significantly helped. I also believe in a different kind of mentorship that I actually I've written about that concept. I call it topic-oriented mentorship. Sometimes people look for mentors as can I find a mentor who can help me with everything? And the reality is it's very hard to find those people. And even if you find them, they may not have time for you. So I believe in this notion of topic-oriented mentorship is you pick one topic that you want to help with. Say you want help in how do you go from international scaling of your business, or let's say how do you price in the AI agents, or how do you do product to platform. So you try to find 3 or 4 people who are good at that, who have done that, and you just go and have a conversation with them about that. Maybe you bring something to them in return of that. But instead of a general, a lot of times people look at can you have general purpose mentors? And I believe in if you have a very specific topic, very specific target, it's much more helpful to get advice.
Makes ton of sense in today's age, because ordinary coaching and mentoring ChatGPT can give you. Yes. So you don't need a human for that. But going into deep operating insights. So we'll wrap up with a quick lightning round and see how that goes. Okay. So first one, what question do you ask yourself before you commit to a new venture or a product idea?
Am I willing to spend 10 years of my life to it? And that's really the most important question always in my mind. Many times people think you start something and it's a quick success, quick win, and it may be. But if you're not excited or passionate about some new venture, new startup idea, new company, new something that you're gonna spend 10 years of your life, don't do it. It will be hard to keep through it.
10-year commitment, that's a minimum, hard one. Okay, you are truly focused on so many different businesses, writing, as well as creating IP, etc. How do you choose what not to work on each week. What's your productivity hack?
I don't have any crazy hack like, wake up at 5 in the morning and do this and that. Like, I wake up at a nice time around 7:30, 8 a.m., start my day in the right kind of ways. I look at mostly my productivity hack is focus on impact. A lot of people are very obsessed with managing time. And I always look at like, instead of managing time, like can I manage impact? And impact comes down to what are you going to, what you're doing, is it moving the needle in one way or the other? And many times we do things that's not going to move the needle. Like, if you don't spend time on it, it's not going to go this way or it's not going to go this way. So why do that? And maybe you can delegate to someone else, maybe. So that's my number one productivity hack, like find things that will make the most impact. I try to keep my calendar with like, you have like pre-scheduled meetings and this and that, and that can fill up the calendar. My rule is like no more than 1/3 of my calendar should be like that. So you have 2/3 flexibility in your calendar and schedule on what will make the impact so you can focus on those.
Fantastic to have Slack in your calendar.
Yeah.
Next one, how do you coach technical founders who want to become better leaders? Any short tips?
Well, it really comes down to 3 skills, I always say. Like, one is the technical product skills. And, technical founders, they do have it. That's why they start with, like, big advantage on it. The 2 skills you have to learn is, one is the go-to-market. And go-to-market, a lot of it is just selling. Like, many times, like, technical founders, especially people coming from India, we kind of look down on sales in the beginning, which is how I was as well. Like, that you look at, like, sales is not as important job or not that important. So you have to learn that. Like, you can't be a successful leader, successful founder if you don't learn to sell. You have to sell to investors, you have to sell to employees, you have to sell to customers, and you constantly have to become like, and the selling is same as like inspiring people in why they should, be part of your journey as a customer, as an investor, as an employee, whatever. The third is, after that is, mentoring and leading people. That's, you have to learn that skill, and it takes some time. Like, I struggled through it. It's like, how do you learn how to delegate? How do you recruit, like, executives to work for you? Very senior people who have like very experienced to come in a small startup. So those are the skills that everyone has to learn, and there's no shortcut to it. Like, sometimes almost everyone makes some mistakes. You learn through mistakes, and you go there.
So true. I've seen that red flag with many India-based founders who are trying to crack into US market by saying, maybe I'll hire a sales rep when they personally haven't done founder sales or haven't sold anything yet. That's a huge red flag. So
you got to learn how to sell as a founder for your product.
So last question for you on what's a mental model that you've borrowed that you use quite often?
Well, to me, the mental model is, I call it like, building a framework for problem solving. Like, if you're solving a problem on how to scale business from one product to multiple products, or how to build a more repeatable sales model, can I create a sort of a framework, like as almost as an engineer, so it doesn't seem like this kind of a big blob that no one can understand and you can't understand. So that always helps. Like, you start from first principles and you create a framework that can potentially scale, and you can I can understand it as an engineer. That's how I look at it mostly.
Jyoti, thank you so much for taking the time to step in and give us this fast and furious answers. Please join your hands to thank Jyoti.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Hey, thank you.